Studios, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac. Well, the losing continues. After dropping 2 of 3 to the Phillies, we lost 3 of 4 to Pittsburgh this weekend, and ended on a Mother's Day Sunday with a very frustrating 10-6 loss. Lots of stats to get into, and some analysis of a couple players, so let's dig right in. All right, on Thursday night, after losing 2 of 3 to the Phillies, we bounced back with a crazy 17-4 win. So that was a cold, windy evening. I was at the game, and we actually left in the 5th, I think, when we had 11 runs. It was just so cold. The wind was cutting through. We tried to move around to different places in the stadium, and no matter where we went, it was just kind of uncomfortable. Plus, it seemed like we had a nice, healthy lead, so we didn't feel like we needed to stick around for the game. And as it turned out, it was a blowout, 17-4. It was very nice to see them come back and get a little bit of respect against the Pirates. But it was short-lived. The next day, Friday, we had a 2-1 loss, followed up by another 2-1 loss on Saturday, and then, like we said today, 10-6. So they are now 2-9 in their last 11 games, and that's after that big winning streak they had. So they're 2-9 in their last 11. So let's take a look at runs scored in these losses. How many runs are they putting up in these games that we're losing? 1, 0, 5, 5, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 6. So 3 of those losses we scored 5 runs, and 6 runs. All the other losses we either scored 1 or no runs. So I mean, that kind of tells the tale right there. If you're not putting runs up on the board, you're not very likely to win that game. But we did have a few games in there where we put up a respectable number, 5 or 6 runs. To me, if you score 5 or 6 runs, you should win that game. And if you only score 1 or 0 runs, you're obviously, you should lose that game. So, not really rocket science here, but it is kind of telling to see. Now, I also wanted to look at who was pitching in those losses, or I'm sorry, who got the losses in those games as far as the pitchers, and whether it was just a starter or reliever. So not necessarily a specific name yet, but if we look at those 9 losses in our last 11, it was hung on the starter, reliever, reliever, reliever. So a lot of those were the starters. Now, some of those were, those starters giving up way too many runs. Some of them, the starter did their job completely, but the offense just couldn't get going. So it's not exactly like, oh man, look how bad the starters have been. Some of those starters were pretty good. And then even in the case of when the reliever got the loss, the starter had a good outing. In some of these cases, the starters were bad and the relievers were lights out. So it's been very up and down and hit or miss by both the starting rotation and the bullpen. It's really kind of hard to put a finger on what the problem has been, and it really just kind of depends on how far back you want to go. One of the guys that sort of seems to have been a whipping boy, at least on social media, is Dakota Hudson. A lot of people are just, really bashing this guy, send him down, cut him, whatever, right? Of course, social media, you're going to get the worst of the worst, but I wanted to kind of look at just what he had done. So he's had 7 games started and another relief appearance where he actually got the save, but we're worried about his starts. So in those starts, he's got a 2-3 record, and before today, he had lost his last 2 games. Today, he had a no decision and gave up 3 earned runs, which were all in the first inning. So that's been kind of the tale of tape for him, too, has been this very up and down, hit or miss kind of thing. He's given up, several earned runs in some of his games and no earned runs in others. So let's take a look at it. What has he done? So I've got Baseball Reference pulled up here. In his appearances, in his starts, he gave up 3 earned runs in the first start, 0 earned runs, 6 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 1, 2, and 3. So he's really only had the one outing, which was the loss in Milwaukee, where he gave up 6 earned runs. So he's really not had that bad of starts. He's not given up a ton of runs. Now, he's not really going that deep into games. He's only gone 6 innings twice, today and 2 starts ago in Washington. Other than that, he's gone 5 innings, 5 2/3, 5 innings, 3 2/3, 4 2/3, 4 1/3. So he's not really going very deep, but he's also not given up a ton of runs. He did have in the last start against the Phillies, he gave up 8 runs, but only 2 of those were earned. Now, I kind of think that's a little misleading. I wouldn't say, oh, well, none of those runs are his fault. Some of them are like, okay, you had an error behind you, but it's still on you to get out of the inning without further damage. When you give up a lot of damage, maybe they're not earned technically, but that's on you. So we've got to say, he did give up 8 runs in that start, and that was 7 hits, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and a home run. So that's the other thing I kind of wanted to look at. He has had 9 home runs total in these 7 starts. He had 3 home runs in his first outing, which admittedly was not a very good outing for him. Then he had 0 home runs, 2, 3, 0, 0, 1, and 0. So not horrible. You'd like to, obviously those 3 home run games, you want to get rid of those. He actually won that game. That was against the Mets. We won 6-4. He gave up 3 home runs, 3 earned runs. They were all solo shots. So yeah, you don't want to see that, and that could come back to haunt you if you do that again with runners on. But it really wasn't bad. That was the only damage he gave up, and we won the game. So it's not like he's just getting tattooed by guys. Now his WHIP, walks plus hits per inning pitch, is 1.78. And that's definitely on the high side. We want to see that closer to, 1.2, 1.3. We'd rather see it close to 1.0, but 1.78 is high. So he's given up a lot of hits. His walks aren't horrible. He has what looks like 18 walks in those 8 appearances. So, not great, but not horrible. For a starter to only have, on average, a couple walks per game. But it's the hits that are kind of killing him. He's given up 44 hits to 29 strikeouts. So I just thought it was interesting. I kind of actually expected the numbers to be a little worse for him, especially over the last few games. Now, like I said, he did lose the last 2 starts before today, but one of those was a 2-1 loss. That's not on him. He went 6 innings, only gave up 2 runs. Only one of those was earned. He had 7 strikeouts in that game and only 2 walks. So that would be a terrific start by most accounts, but we didn't get any, run support, and he lost the game. No big deal. Now the last start or the start after that, the other loss was the one we were talking about where against the Phillies, we lost 11-1. He gave up 8 runs, but only 2 were earned. He only had 3 walks, but only 3 strikeouts. So not as clean of an outing, but not terrible. He didn't have any help. That was the one where we had all those errors in the field, a pass ball by Yachty, just a really ugly, ugly game. And again, you can't really hang that one on him necessarily. Before that, he had 2 wins in a row. He had the only ugly loss was that the one in Milwaukee, 10-7, where he gave up 6 runs, all earned, only pitched 3 2/3. And had 2 home runs given up and only 3 strikeouts. So that was really that lone, ugly, ugly loss. Everything else hasn't been so bad. So, like I said, I was kind of surprised to see that. I expected a lot worse stats, and I feel like he's pitched worse lately. So definitely we're seeing that on social media. People are just ripping him apart. Every little thing that goes wrong, they're kind of blaming him. Part of that's because he's a young guy, he's a rookie. They're not going to get as much of a leash as some of the veterans are, but he's kind of quietly doing his job. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So I was kind of expecting that, once Carlos Martinez comes back, they'll probably put him in the bullpen and maybe move John Gant into the rotation. And I still think that's a possibility, but I thought it was almost, going to be an obvious decision Hudson would get sent down to Memphis. But now I'm not so sure. I mean, I think Hudson could definitely stay where he's at. Gant's obviously been effective in the bullpen, so, maybe we send down somebody like Leon or Gallegos. It's hard to say. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how that plays out. Another guy that I wanted to take a look at was Paul Goldschmidt. We've talked about him a couple times, but over the last 7 days, before today, he was batting .348, .444 on base with a .391 slugging. So very good numbers. Not so high on the slugging, but his average and on base was crazy. But only 1 double, no home runs, only 2 RBIs, only 4 walks, and 7 strikeouts in the last 7 days. So basically, lots of singles, but not really much else. Now today, he was 2 for 5 with a home run, 2 RBI, no walks, but no strikeouts. So we've been saying, he's been doing, much better, but not hitting for power. So today he got that home run in there, the RBI. So hopefully he can kind of start putting those two things together, the on-base percentage and the slugging percentage. Get those together and get that OPS up. So we'll see. It is starting to warm up. You wouldn't know it around here for the middle of May. It's been ridiculously cold, but as the month heats up, maybe he will too. Now, what we really need is to get Carp going. I think that's been part of the problem, at least with Goldschmidt's RBI totals. He doesn't have Carp on base in front of him very often, and the pitcher behind them. So if we can, and today Munoz batted first. Carp had the day off until he pinch hit later. And of course, Munoz got on in the first inning, and Goldschmidt hit a home run and knocked him in. Took an early lead. So actually, I don't think we took the lead at that point because Hudson gave up 3 runs in the top of the first. So as we were kind of bragging about Hudson, but that was all the damage he gave up. Was those 3 runs in the first, and then he was fine. Anyway, back to Goldschmidt. So I think if we can get Carp going, get him on base a little bit more, put the pressure on the pitcher to kind of have to make pitches. You don't want to throw out of the zone as much because you definitely don't want to have Goldschmidt and Carp getting on base, having runners in scoring position for DeYoung. So just having that guy on base in front of you helps so much in forcing the pitcher to kind of throw pitches in the strike zone that, of course, Goldschmidt hopefully can hit. So we'll see. As we get Carp going, I think that's going to help get Goldschmidt going as well. All right. That's pretty much all I've got. This weekend was very, very frustrating for a lot of us. Plus, it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there. So I didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time today kind of analyzing and looking at stats and writing everything down. I hope to get a little more in-depth on the next episode, but just wanted to kind of complain about the way they looked. Losing 3 out of 4 to the Pirates is embarrassing in my opinion, and especially after that first win where we just dominated and it looked so good, to really just come out and be ineffective against the rest of the Pirates. Now today, I remember the starter for the Pirates, the lefty that they had going, I looked at his ERA and his record, and I thought, all right, today's our chance to jump on this guy. He's got a high ERA. And we did. It looked like early on, after 2 innings, we put up 6 runs. I was like, okay, we've got this. We're going to bounce back and split the series. And after those 6, we couldn't get anything else going. And it was just a lot of the same of what we've been seeing. Some balls hit hard, a lot of fly balls, but just couldn't string enough together to push some runs across the plate. So a lot of that lately, way too much of this, doing a little but not enough. And it's got to turn around, or we are going to quickly find ourselves too many games back to overcome. The Cubs have been, they keep trouncing along. They took, I want to say 2 or 3 from the Brewers this weekend. So if we look at the standings now, the Cubs are in first place with a 24-14 record. The Brewers are 2 games back with 24-18. The Pirates and Cardinals are now tied at 3.5 games back, but the Pirates have us in the loss column. So they're 20-17. We're 22-19. And the Reds are trailing 7.5 back of the Cubs at 18-23. So thankfully, the Reds are much more inept than we have been lately. So hopefully over the next few games, we can pick up some over the Pirates and hopefully even leapfrog the Brewers here. So what do we have coming up? We got 3 at Atlanta, 3 games at Texas, and then we come back next week with 2 games against the Royals and then 3 home against Atlanta. So we're going to have 3 at Atlanta and then 3 home against Atlanta next week. I'm definitely going to be going to definitely one of the Kansas City games, probably both, and hopefully 1 or 2 of those Atlanta games too. Just so you know, I'll give you another follow-up on our first week with the ballpark pass, standing room only. That's the $30 a month thing where you can go to the Budweiser Terrace or any other standing room places. And I got to say, so far, I kind of like it. We've gone on some day games, some night games, some really cold games, some not so cold. And, you know, we kind of bounced around in that terrace a little bit. Some places you can sit, some places you can stand. It's very convenient to go down and get another beer. There's bathrooms right there at the base of the terrace. There's plenty of different eating places very nearby. You don't have to walk very far to get certain things. Now, if there's a specific thing you're wanting, like the craft beers, I believe are down below. At least the one I'm thinking of is that big craft beer place on the first floor. That would be kind of a haul from the terrace, the Budweiser Terrace. And some of these other specific eating locations that have very certain things, those are a little bit of a trek. But the basics, your nachos, your hot dogs, your pretzels and all that stuff. There's a specific burger bar right there at the terrace. And then I think I mentioned last time, they have like some kind of grill that cooks a lot of grilled chicken and things like that. It smells great up there. So anyway, it's pretty cool. You're definitely high up and sort of removed from the game, but you can see the whole field. And it's a different experience. You're used to kind of sitting in seats with people right next to you, shoulder to shoulder. Your knees, your shins are touching the seat in front of you, and you might be sitting next to strangers. You're definitely going to be getting up while people, standing up to let people through as they go to the bathroom and they get more beer or whatever. The last game we went to earlier this season, before we had the pass, I swear the people next to us got up 15 different times to go get more food, to go to the bathroom. One guy, as soon as he got finished eating whatever he was eating, he crinkled up his trash and got up and threw it away, which, I can appreciate that. But how about wait until the next time you're going to go get something? He just threw his trash away and then came back. We all had to stand up again. So up there in the terrace, that never happens. There's nobody getting in front of you. There's plenty of room for people to walk behind you, which they don't even need to do that much, the way they sort of have it set up. It's very less intrusive in that way. You can just kind of find your spot and hang out. You can move around easily without bumping into each other. It just feels a little bit more private. It's kind of weird to think that in this standing room only area, but it's very much more private, and you can kind of have a conversation during the game. Now, that being said, it's easier to get removed from the game. You're so far away, and you are sort of standing and, changing your position and looking this way and looking that way and talking, as opposed to sort of sitting in a seat that's facing the game and kind of forcing you to kind of zone in on the action. So it's just a different way to experience it. So far, I like it. I'm not sure if we're going to continue next month. We'll sort of see, and it'll sort of depend on the schedules that we have coming up and what the giveaways are. We've already missed a couple good giveaways this weekend. We missed the Mother's Day handbag or purse that they were giving away, and I missed the yesterday's game. I didn't go. It was going to be too cold and rainy, but they had the cool stretch T-shirt that would have been nice to have. But I did get the Yachty and Roberto Clemente bobblehead, which was kind of cool. Add that to the collection. So anyway, so far I'm digging the Ballpark Pass Budweiser Terrace experience. So if any of you are at the game, look me up, hit me up on Instagram at BFIBs Almanac, and we'll come get a selfie together. So, all right, that's all I got. Until next time, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac.